It takes courage to speak the truth, and Paressia is an American Freedom Alliance production where we celebrate and elevate those with that courage.
Well, I'm delighted to be relaunching the Paressia series with an interview with my great friend Peter Mcilvanna, who reports from the UK on all things, related to what's going on there politically, culturally, from a religious vantage point, all of these aspects related to freedom, essentially. And we were talking yesterday about all that's going on over there. Many of us follow the unbelievable turbulent times, the rioting, the fires I'm hearing about now. The beautiful land that we know of is, the land of Shakespeare, of Churchill, of the Cotswolds, of Downton Abbey, for heaven's sake, is now the rape capital of the world. It's being overrun, it's being destroyed, and now people are being arrested for even talking about it. So I thought it was just such an important topic for us to clue in on. I don't know about you, but I'm not seeing this all over my news. CBS, NBC, ABC, CNN, Fox, nobody's really covering it except the alternative media, of which Peter is now one of the main voices discussing what's going on. So Peter, great to see you, and thanks for joining me today. It's just such an important topic. And we over here, we're really just aware to an extremely minor degree, but not the extent to which your country it's becoming unrecognizable.
Well, I wish I could join you, Karen, on a happier topic. One day we will do a cheery topic. One day we will. But it's all, Karen, it's great to be on with you. Thank you so much. So to give this happen, well, we've had 14 years in the UK from 2010. We've had 14 years of a so-called Conservative government, Conservative in name only, called the Tories, which is their name back from for the last 190 years. The most successful political party in the world, managed to actually self-preservation is at the center of the British Conservative Party. So we had them for the last 14 years. The anger in the last 3 weeks, and I'll touch back, is probably from Tony Blair's time, where we had mass immigration. We had the numbers change from the tens of thousands to the hundreds of thousands, and that was late 90s. That sets the scene to the huge change in immigration numbers that have utterly swamped the UK. We then have the Brexit debate. So we're 2014. We had that vote, but all that debate around that, and that was focused on mass immigration. It was focused on communities being changed, people being left behind, and multiculturalism, meaning that it is everyone except the nationals of the country. They're last in line, last in the queue, and they end up not getting anything because all the money has gone to those people who arrived yesterday. So that was 2014, and beyond all odds, against everything, we actually won that referendum, Brexit referendum, to free us from the clutches of the European Union that we had been in for over 40 years. So we have now Brexit in name only. Now, fast forward to this year, we had a general election, and we have gone through many prime ministers. I remember being over stateside whenever Liz Truss resigned, and I got a message from a good friend of both of ours, Karen, Mr. Steve Bannon, who said, "Hey, can you come in the studio all morning because your prime minister has just resigned?" And I landed the night before, and I thought, that's good timing, kind of. So I ended up being 2 hours in the warm discussing that, and we've had obviously Boris Johnson, we've had before then Theresa May, then we had Liz Truss. Now, Liz Truss was not supposed to get in. She was an actual Conservative. She was shafted and removed, and Rishi Sunak was what the establishment wanted. He was put in. We had him for about 2 years. Dismal polling didn't achieve anything. Basically, a rich kid who thinks he has the right to govern the country. And then we have a general election in the summer, and we get Keir Starmer,
Right.
Sir Keir Starmer. Whenever you have Sir in a name of someone who is a hard left communist, it's a bit weird. But anyway,
That's
we do
jarring, isn't it?
we do
Yeah.
things strangely. So we now have a Labour government, far left government, with the biggest majority in 100 years. And they're absolute power for the next nearly 5 years now, just under 5 years. And they had a honeymoon period for a month. And then we had a individual went in with a knife to a school concert, a Taylor Swift themed school concert up in Stockport, which is the northwest of England, up in Liverpool area. And 3 children, 6, 8, and 9, were murdered. Another 6 were severely injured, and another 10 were injured. So he was taken out, being arrested, his sentencing coming up, which is all part of it. So a lot of anger spilled out from this. And initially, information online, this was an illegal immigrant that came in, just arrived in the country, a Muslim illegal immigrant. So ticking those boxes of concern with the British public, that wasn't the case, or so we're told. It sometimes is. No, it always is very difficult to know what is correct and what is incorrect, and that's why, Karen, what you do, what we do, Hartsville, with so many alternative media outlets do, is so vital to actually bring the news in a way that is not censored and controlled by our respective governments and institutions. But the rumor went out this was an illegal immigrant that had stabbed these 3 girls and gone in with a huge knife into this school event. That didn't seem to be the case, but many, many, many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people came out to Stockport in anger at what had happened and in solidarity with the community. That then spilled over to violence, into looting, into attacking of the police, and we saw a week of that. And we now end up with many people being arrested and charged. So that's where we end up. That's been over the last 3 weeks. The stabbing happened just 3 weeks ago. And we have seen a clampdown by the British State and Police that I haven't seen. Even during COVID, we didn't see such a clampdown on individuals. We saw legislation being used, police being used, but actually not a clampdown in terms of legal action in terms of the courts. So we have now a weaponized police, and we knew that. We have weaponized judiciary. So, hey, I feel at home with you, an American.
Yeah, I know. Neither of our countries is recognizable, it seems to me. I mean, I can't wrap my mind around what's going on here in the US, and we have constitutional protections. I was going to say theoretically, we actually do have them, so we have to use them. But still, the incursions on freedoms here is appalling, in the weaponization, as you say, of the courts, of our legal system. It has become unrecognizable. And when those who one would, generally speaking, are considered to be criminals are let free, and those who aren't are in prison. Our mutual friend, as you mentioned, Steve Bannon, actually in prison. We have obviously an out of control immigration system. Our borders are flung wide open to all and sundry, and many are truly evil people. Not all, but we don't even know who's coming in. You're having a similar situation, and I know it all began with immigration, when you start to let in people who don't have the same standards, mores, values, sense of law and order, who have zero desire to assimilate. And I remember that Brexit, in large part, was because if you're part of the European Union, once someone is in the EU, there's free travel within. And so I remember thinking at the time it was a means of stemming that flow from the continent over to England. But that doesn't seem to have, as you say, Brexit's been sort of in name only. It's become more of a inconvenience now, and it's not really solving any of the issues. And that's, I think, in large part, the rage that we're seeing is we've lost control over our country and over its culture, over its laws, over our own speech. We're not the ones who are protected anymore. It's the others coming. So is there a general tenor of rage throughout the country?
There is, and there are all different aspects to what you mentioned there, Karen. And the biggest concern is the attack on free speech. And we are seeing a clampdown that I've never witnessed before in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And that will be the playbook that is rolled out. And this is why what is happening here is so important to those living in the US, to our Americans, my American cousins, your American neighbors, because what is the shutdown of dissent in the UK was so well done because it was so absolute that will be the model that Trudeau wants to use, that Sleepy Joe wants to use, that will be used down under in Australia and New Zealand, because it has been so successful. So there's that attack on free speech that has been rolled out in the UK and will be used to the nth degree everywhere else in the West, especially in those Five Eyes. Yeah, because I can imagine Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, already having many conversations with the Five Eyes countries and sharing what is happening, saying, hey guys, you need to shut down dissent. This is the playbook that we've worked on. Right. This is what you need to do, and handing that over. So that's what we're seeing. The anger is there. The rage is there. The difficulty, and this is what makes us in the UK very different from in the US, is that you have a political outlet in it in terms of President Trump, in terms of him understanding what is the problem of mass immigration. And you've got two different visions for America. You've got the vision of Kamala Harris, and you've got the vision of President Trump. You've got one or the other. In the UK, we don't have that choice. We don't have, it's a uniparty, complete uniparty. And I know you have a uniparty in terms of the Democrats, Republicans. President Trump stands aside of all of that as an individual, championing the rights of every American citizen who's left behind. We don't have any champion like that in the UK. So the concerns are exactly the same. The anger is exactly the same, but actually we don't have a political solution in that. And that's why I look across the pond with envy to what you have and the possibility you have of change through the league, through the electoral system. We don't have that possibility in the UK. We've had, of course, Nigel Farage in the UK, who, without him, we wouldn't have Brexit, who started UKIP, that then became the Brexit Party, that achieved that referendum. Towering figure in British politics, a patriot, understands the damage that mass immigration has to society. But with our first past the post system and not a PR system, he was not able to achieve the massive success at the ballot box in the election that he should have achieved. And 4 million votes. I mean, back in the days, AfD, Alternative for Deutschland in Germany, they got 4 million votes back in 2015. They got 96 MPs. Reform got 5 or 6. So that shows the discrepancy in the electoral system that we have. So whenever you're up against that, you've got a big hill to climb to actually achieve political success. And Nigel Farage is going to cause chaos and shenanigans in the British Parliament, and it's going to be wonderful. But when you're up against a far left government with a majority of 250, something like that, actually you can't actually achieve much. And we get 650 MPs, Labour got over 400 in that. So it's a win-win on their side. And that's the difficulty we have in the UK, that baked in unfairness to smaller parties, so different than Europe. I mean, the European parliamentary elections we had, only 2 months ago, massive success on populist parties on the right. Huge. We have not seen that success at all. That hasn't transcribed into into Reform, which is the Brexit party, Nigel Farage's party in the UK. They have not had that success. And if Nigel had been standing under any European system, actually would have done very well. And that's separate from Brexit. That is not me in any way saying, oh, you know, I wish with the European Union. No,
Right.
the European Union or the octopus that controls all the states. That is separate from the political and electoral systems that each country have. But we don't have that. And therefore, we are at a massive disadvantage politically, despite the anger, despite the rage, despite the concern. Actually, if you don't have a political solution to that, then it's actually quite dangerous for you as a country. And that's the dangerous times we are in the UK.
That's exactly where I'm feeling this going is, as you say, we have political recourse theoretically. Obviously it's, you know, it's such a charming notion that our elections are actually legitimate elections and that the truth will out, and we've got this, you know, level playing field and the people's voice will, nobody has that feeling at all, just from the media's propagandizing and election fraud and Google search, just all the various ways they have of manipulating our perspective, let alone our actual votes. But we still do have that, and we have the Constitution, and I'll get to that in a second. And you don't. So we have this notional idea of, yeah, you know, the ballot box, and you literally do not have an electoral and a means of dealing with this through elections. Where does one use one's voice then?
So we don't have a freedom of speech amendment. We don't have guns.
Yeah.
So you kind of look and you realize maybe we shouldn't have given up our guns so quickly in Europe, but Europeans are utterly defenseless.
Yeah.
Zero defense against government. And if anyone does try, they'll be destroyed because there is no pushback. Now, my concern is that Americans have the firepower, but maybe will not use it. And I don't know how far you had to be pushed to use it. And I pray that you're never in that situation in the States. I pray that things work out in other ways, because revolution is not a pretty thing, as we've seen across Europe time and time again. So as much as people may call for revolution, it's actually not the smartest call. And I understand that enthusiasm and wanting for change, but it often doesn't end well. It's normally a very bloody situation. So, but you have the guns, especially in Texas. I don't know where all the Texans can actually fight for the rest of the country, but hey, and you've got the free speech amendment. We don't have that. We don't have any free speech, as I know we've talked with our good friend Elizabeth Savage-Wolf, who's talked about her experiences in terms of free speech and how the courts clamp down on you and how the courts are the absolute enemy to free speech across Europe and the UK. So we don't have those protections. But despite you having the protections, you still have 1,000 people locked up for J6.
Yes.
Despite you having those protections, 2020 came and gone, and Trump should be in the middle of his second term of presidency.
That's right.
So despite you having those protections of the Second Amendment, actually, no one has actually used that to protect American values.
Right.
Despite the fact of you having free speech, if you're destroyed in the courts, it's irrelevant. And you can hold up and say, oh, I've got protection under the Constitution. Well, if the judge disagrees, you don't have much recourse.
Right.
It doesn't matter how much money you have to fight that. If you're up against those in power, then there's actually not much you can do about it. And that's why we need that's why we need billionaires to actually say, well, we're going to bankroll legal challenges and we're going to win. We're going to put the best, and we're going to win. That's the only way they can happen, because British citizens, whenever they've got carted off, 700 now imprisoned over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I was going to
They
ask
didn't
you
get
that.
political representations. They didn't get any access to any legal help. They were arrested, charged, and thrown in jail in 48 hours. So we don't have that. You have it written down, but that's different from actually happening on a day-to-day basis. And most Americans, just like most Brits, we don't have a lawyer on speed dial. We don't have a lawyer on call because that costs money, and most people are living paycheck to paycheck, and therefore the government know that, and they're using that situation to shoehorn people into submitting to whatever authoritarian regime they want. That's what we're seeing in the UK, and often that's what you've seen in the US through the legal system, and certainly through J6.
Absolutely. It really is a horror. And before we talk about how the left does spend money in those kinds of ways and is very happy to, and bankrolls all kinds of things that are anti-freedom, anti-UK, anti-US. Tell me a little bit about these arrests of people for speech, for posts, for social media. What is going on with this? I mean, we've never seen this kind of a wholesale imprisonment and lawfare against people for free speech. We know that you don't have the First Amendment. We do, but it's really being used in the most extraordinary way there. What's happening?
It is, and the amount of newspaper headlines. And I was on a show on Monday, and we had about 10 headlines of what had been happening, videos of police actually threatening individuals. There was a video of a police officer saying in a minute and a half, 4 times they said, "We're coming for you." Sinister,
Oh, Peter.
extremely sinister. And that's what we are facing. And they want people to live in fear, just like living in China. There is no difference really. It's just the measure is different, but the outcome is the same. That if you're against the state, you'll be locked up. There isn't freedom of speech to oppose or critique or have a different view. If you do not fit in, then you're an extremist, you're far right, and you'll be locked up and thrown in jail. So that's what we have seen. We have seen justice being done swiftly. I wish it was done swiftly for the 98% of rape allegations of the police that never actually end up being sorted out. So that's not a priority for the government, but actually saying racist things to a police dog, or
Police dog.
police dog. So that was 20 months in jail for saying racist comments to police dog. The police dog did bite the guy, but that's I thought you could actually sue the police, but no, 20 months in jail. We're seeing 3 years. We're seeing the head of public prosecutions 2 weeks ago put out a video, and he said that it was up to 10 years in jail for any involvement in the riots, and that meant retweeting. And at that point, Elon Musk started retweeting. Tweeting nonstop, and I love that attitude. It's an American brashness that we miss in the UK.
Yeah.
It's bring it on. If you tell me I can't do that, I'm going to do it 10 times. Where in Britain we say, okay, we'll wait in the queue and we'll be told what to do. And that is one of the differences between our countries, separated by this pond. But yeah, so we had that pushback from Elon Musk, but we've had now. Yeah, around 700, I thought over 1,000 people, 1,100 people so far being arrested. I believe 700 are now in jail, no access to legal representation. And they're in jail from between 4 months and 3.5 years. And we've had a number of people being held for a day, 2 days, and questioned nonstop because of tweets they put out, because of Facebook posts they put out. And the media are lock, stock, and barrel, hand in glove with the government in pushing this agenda, by calling everyone racist who opposes mass immigration. So whenever you've got your media working together with the government, with the courts, just like we saw under the COVID tyranny,
Right.
but actually this is something even deeper. It's one thing getting your YouTube channel pulled. It's another thing being thrown in jail for 2 years for retweeting a post of a riot and what is happening. We've had someone jailed for 20 months for telling a police officer, "You're not English anymore," for shouting at a police officer. 1.5 years in jail for that. And I mean, you mentioned about the mainstream media not talking about it. When Elon Musk is on your side,
Yes.
suddenly it changes. And I know I've been probably 15, 16 programs so far in the last 2 weeks been on discussing this. And there's a huge interest over stateside of what is happening because there is concern. And despite the focus being on November and being on the
Yeah.
crazy DNC in the last few days, actually, Americans do look and there is a concern at what is happening in the UK and how that's going to be rolled out to the States. But we've had utter clampdown, courts disregarding their duty. And I think I saw all different posts comparing 8 of the judges and 8 of the judges letting people off for sex offences, child sex offences, with a slap on the wrist, but jailing individuals for 1, 2, 3 years for Facebook posts. That's the legal system we are in. And whenever the judiciary is so complicit in the government's aims and objectives, then you have to sit back and you have to reassess, which is what I've said on every interview. You have to reassess what you're doing and reassess how you push back in this because everything is against you. And that element of fear is pervading the population, and that's been used efficiently by the government to clamp down and to silence people, and that's what they've done. They silenced dissent.
Do you think that a different person in the White House over here would have any effect on, or let me put it a little bit differently. Do you think who's in the White House here does have an effect on the general sense in Europe of what is and isn't okay? The fact that Joe Biden, Kamala, Obama, that regime is in the White House, do you think that sends a message to Europe that, hey, we're on your side and we will support you in whatever it is that you're doing. We won't speak up against it. Just case in point, the Elon Musk, the email sent by the EU to Elon saying, hey, watch it, what you do with Donald Trump, or we're going to come after you. And Elon, as you note, just said, to heck with you, and carried on.
You can't repeat what he said on TV.
Right, but I'll just tone it down. But in theory, one would hope that the president of the United States of America would reply to such an email and say what Elon Musk said, that you don't get to tell us in the slightest what is and isn't okay. So do you think there's sort of the approval that they know, that Starmer knows and that Macron knows, sitting in the White House here, it allows a certain behavior that Donald Trump in the White House might not? Or do you think it's irrelevant?
I think it is important. I don't think it's irrelevant. I think actually the person driving the free speech agenda worldwide is Elon Musk at the moment, like him or loathe him. He is the one. He is the opposition to the far left British government. In terms of who's in the White House, I think that's very important, but that's behind the scenes. So whenever the government meets with Five Eyes, and if America have a patriot in the White House, in President Trump, then of course President Trump will say, we're not sharing any information with you. We're putting a full freeze on the sharing of all intelligence information because of your threats. We are putting a freeze on any extradition that we have with the UK because of your threats, because you're threatening US citizens. And until that changes, actually, Five Eyes is frozen for any intelligence sharing information with the UK. That's what Trump would say. That's what we expect him to say. And I believe that's what he would say, where you've Biden asking, well, what day of the week is it? And then obviously Barack Hussein Obama actually sending that message to the British government in whatever America wants. So it does make a difference. It's difficult to gauge and quantify that because it happens behind the scenes. And there is the one bravado, but having Elon Musk on board in terms of that social media presence, that changes something. He is that bombastic figure, slightly reined in a little bit than President Trump. But because he owns Twitter, he actually is one of the most powerful people in the world.
Yeah,
And he is
absolutely.
using that, and he doesn't hold back. So, and that EU letter written by one MEP, then they got slapped down, and there was
Yes.
a half-hearted apology from the EU. So Elon Musk knows how to play that game expertly. President Trump plays it in a different way. Maybe with, yeah, I'll not go any further on that comment. But
Fair enough.
so it is important. It absolutely is important who's in the White House. America are the most powerful country in the world. And of course, it makes a difference who is in the White House. So we need to pray, and all your viewers watching need to get out and do all they can do to make sure President Trump is in the White House post 5th of November.
Of course, I can't say that.
But I can.
But you can. My perspective is, vote for the candidate you think will provide greater freedom, national security, safety, put America first. That's all I can say. Whoever that might be, that's the lens I look at things through. But there's no question that whoever does that in the White House makes certainly Western Europe, makes the world, really, I would say, a safer place. And when the United States has at its helm, either actually or behind the scenes, an entity that aims for the global goals, that puts America last, that is all about the chaos that's being fomented in the UK, destroying First Amendment. Now there's rumblings, of course, about the Second. We definitely, of course, want to use the first before we even have to talk about the Second. So as you note, through elections, through speech, through media, through information, that's where things should change. And we can do that here, which you can't there. So Peter, what do you see happening next in the UK in the moments we have left?
So the British government have done extremely well on shutting down that dissent, as I said, through our mainstream media, through our legal system, and through the police. So that's what's happened. That's completely calmed down. The government have done very well on jailing a large number of people, and happy to release up to 5,000 prisoners by the beginning of September. That's the announcement, that they're just going to release them. Those who have served
prisoners, dangerous prisoners, are being released. For what purpose?
Oh, because they need to free up places for all the far right. As of last week, we only had 360, 370 places left in our British prisons. So you have to let out all the bad people to put away all the new bad people, which are all the far right people. So that was announced on Monday, Operation Early Dawn. 5,000 people get released, supposedly not the really bad ones. That's what we're told. Don't worry, it won't be the rapists and murderers, but they've already released murderers after 6 months to free up places. So obviously we don't trust our institutions, and the last thing I will do is trust the British government. So they've announced they're releasing up to 5,000 prisoners. That can free up tons of places for putting those in. God forbid we'd actually send all the foreign prisoners we have home to the foreign countries that take up 25% of our British prison spaces. Let's instead release all the bad people into the public without any checks on whether they will reoffend or whether they've learned their lessons. You just release them out. And then it frees up prison places. So it means the government can arrest thousands more, and they have freed up prison places, because the moment they don't, because they didn't expect this to happen, it all blew up. Keir Starmer had to clamp down to make sure his government actually survived. So they have now got the spaces to go and arrest thousands of people for Facebook posts and start extradition attempts on anyone they want, because they said, doesn't matter where you are in the world, we will bring you back to this country to try you. So they will go anywhere worldwide. That's why,
oh goodness,
with Dr. Robert Malone on War Room last week, and he said he's been advised not to travel through the UK at the moment because he could be picked up and arrested. And I said, well, I would recommend you don't fly through the UK at the moment. I would
Oh
agree with that
my.
assessment. Because it's one thing is I'm sure it's fine, but then when it does happen, you think, maybe more caution. So at the moment, we do need more caution. Where are we going in the UK? Well, we've got Nigel Farage with the Reform Party having 5 or 6 MPs out of 650 making a noise. All well and good, but at the moment, that's like a yappy little dog.
Yeah.
Whenever you've got a bulldog, it's irrelevant. We've got the media lock stop in terms of working with the government, pushing forward their message, just like they did under COVID. So there isn't any pushback. So it is a case of having to regroup. And whenever at the big rally we had back in 26th, 27th of July, Tommy Robinson was there. And then you'd Carl Benjamin there, who runs Lotus Eaters, the #1 podcast in the UK. You've got Lawrence Fox, well known, who was Hunter Biden in My Son Hunter. And I know you've had Anne and Fel McCallum on before discussing their great work involved with that film. So just to connect to our US audience. And so and who else do you have? You had Calvin Robinson, great guy, Calvin Robinson, mixed race, one parent from the Caribbean, one parent from England, was rejected from the Church of England because he was too biblical on his views on marriage and gender.
Too biblical.
His biblical views, one man, one woman, you can't change your gender over breakfast, wasn't accepted. And you've got many other, Maher Toussi, high profile Iranian guy who does fantastic media work, really well connected. And then top of that, you get Jordan Peterson and Elon Musk. So whenever you've got that size of individual able to amplify the voice, suddenly you've got a problem. And the British government have a problem. They realize they have a problem. And they've tried to put fear into the heart of the British public, just like you'd expect in China. China don't have the pushback on media that we do on the social media side. So, Jordan Peterson's interview with Tommy was fantastic. They've just done a second one. And then Elon Musk has been reposting that. So whenever you've got individuals like that who open up, Gad Saad, I saw an interview with Tommy and he understands the issues. You've got many voices. And that means the message on the clampdown will be amplified, will be exposed. And therefore, it's up to the public what happens. Our job in the media is to highlight injustices, is to speak what is happening. And then it's up to the general public to take that information and do something with it. So I don't know what's going to happen with that, but I know the message is getting out in terms of alternative media. I know people are awake to what is happening, despite the efforts of our courts, police, media, and government. And I believe people will have a pushback. It's just people are feeling quite sore at the moment because of the clampdown by the government, and they need to assess what the next steps now mean. And all I say, I pray and hope that the next steps are peaceful, because with that clash between the government and the general population, I don't know where it's going to go. But we pray for wisdom in all the leaders involved in that, and that we have a peaceful outcome that actually holds on to what it means to be a patriot in the UK and works that out in the light of this new situation, which is patriots are hated by the government, by the media, by the police, and by the courts.
It's impossible to wrap one's mind around, but we join you in your prayers with ours for your country and ours. What a time we live in.
I know, but we roll up our sleeves and we just get on with it, because there's no alternative, and we are all patriots, and therefore you do what's best for your country, your culture, your society, your neighbor, and you just get on with it despite all the chaos around you. We've all faced that during the COVID tyranny, and this is just another step in that governmental control.
Speak up, speak out, always, and especially when speech is being clamped down on. I'm sure you find yourself in a difficult position, but I see you speaking up, speaking out. It's the only thing you can do. Well, Peter, thank you very much, really. Thanks for all you do in exposing all the totalitarian power grabs in every aspect. And again, our prayers are with you and with the UK, with England. And we appreciate the work that you're doing.
No, not all. We get on with it. And it's always awesome to hang out with you, Karen. So thank you.
Likewise, Peter. Likewise.